Today I'll be chatting about my finished zipper sweater, fluffy winter knits, and local fair submissions. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Hella Knits. My name is Julia. I'm back with another chatty knitting video. Today I am wearing my sweater number 18 from My Favorite Things Knitwear. This sweater I made a long time ago now, and as you can see it's very well loved and pilled. This is a top-down drop shoulder all over texture sweater, and I made this in some Color Mart chainette merino and alpaca silk. I wouldn't recommend either of those yarns, and honestly I haven't ordered from Color Mart since because I find the quality is not the best and you sort of never know what you're gonna get. But that being said, I love this sweater. It's very comfy and the fit of the sweater 18 is actually really nice. Let's just get into it. I have a lot of exciting things to share. The first and most exciting thing that I have to share with you is my finished Dagmar Zipper Sweater. Here she is. She's finally done, you guys. I can't believe it. You might notice that there are some ribbons on her. It's because I actually submitted this sweater in my local fair. Every fall in my town there's a fair run by the Agricultural Society. There's all sorts of competitions and things like sewing, crochet, baking, even grown vegetables and that sort of thing. I decided to submit some of my knits into the fair this year. I did submit a few things last year, which was my first time sending anything in, but this year I submitted 6 things. So I'll chat about them as I go throughout the video. Some of them are new things that I haven't shown you, and some of them are things that you've already seen. This sweater actually came first overall and earned best in show in the fair, which is super cool. I will take these ribbons off now because I think they're going to be rustling as I move the sweater around. So now that those are off the sweater, let me show you the finished product here. This sweater is from Petiteknit. It is a top-down drop shoulder all over cable sweater knit with worsted weight yarn. I knit this with the worsted weight yarn from Topsy farms, which is a local Ontario sheep farm, in their medium gray natural undyed color. The gauge was perfect and I'm really happy with how the yarn worked up. I was worried it might feel a little stiff because the yarn is so woolly and thick, especially with the cable pattern, but now that I've blocked it, it has a really nice drape actually, but it still has some structure, which I'm really happy about. The main thing with the yarn that I was kind of concerned with was as I was blocking it, there was like dirt coming off of the yarn. I don't know if it was dirt or if it was spinning oil or a bit of both, but the water was looking a little bit brown and dirty. So I wound up rinsing it a few times actually, and I got the water as clean as I could. I was worried about felting it, so I didn't want to agitate the yarn too much. Right now it doesn't smell too much like spinning oil, but it definitely still smells sheepy, and I don't know if that's ever gonna go away. I'm not too bothered by it because it's not like an overly strong smell. You really kind of have to get in there to get that sheepy smell, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think I got all the spinning oil off of it. I still noticed some pieces of hay and grass throughout. I don't know if that's just because I didn't wash it enough or if that's just gonna happen with this kind of yarn. I think that it'll be okay. I managed to get the water pretty clean before I laid it out to dry. When I got this yarn for this sweater, I got the exact quantity that it called for in the pattern, which was 8 skeins, because I figured since it's a natural undyed wool, I didn't want to go back in case I ran out of yarn and risk it being a completely different color. So I got all 8 at the same time, and I actually didn't even need to break into the last ball. So I have the last ball of yarn here. This is a full skein of worsted weight yarn. It's kind of funny, I was binding off the body thinking I'm kind of getting close to the end here of like the ball that I was working on, because there was maybe 2 feet left on the ball, but it was literally the perfect amount of yarn for me to finish binding off the body, and I did not have to break into this ball. So this is what I have left. I'm thinking I can probably make a pair of mittens with this or a hat, but I don't know how I feel about having this wool right on my forehead because it might be a little sensitive. So in hindsight, obviously I didn't need to buy the 8th ball, but I was glad that I didn't play yarn chicken because that would have been very stressful. I should mention that I made the size extra small, and I'm so glad that I did. When I was first contemplating making this pattern, I cast on for the size small, and I actually knit a decent section of it before changing my mind to the extra small. I thought that it would be nice to have it a little bit oversized, but then going back to the suggested ease in the sizing guide on the pattern, I realized that it would be way too oversized as the size small, and that was especially noticeable as I cast on and hit the width of the shoulders for the size small, realizing that it was going to be way too big. So I pulled back and I converted to the size extra small, and I'm really glad that I did. The fit is honestly perfect. Like, it could not be more perfect. I can show some footage of me wearing it so you can see what the fit is like. Yeah, I followed the pattern exactly, so the sleeves are exactly the length that the pattern called for the size extra small, and the body is also the exact same length. I was contemplating cropping it because, as you can see, there's a half cable detail right at the bottom. I was contemplating stopping it 1/2 cable above. So instead of stopping here, I was thinking of stopping here because the pattern said to finish at either of those points on the cable motif. But I was looking at the sample photos and I realized I basically counted these cables down, the large ones down the side, and realized that the sample had, how many was it? 1, 2, 3, 4.5 cable motifs. And so I just decided to copy that. I followed the instructions for the ripping exactly. The only thing was that I flipped it. I did a German short row and I flipped it inside out so that my ribbing was nice and clean, and you cast off with tubular cast off. Then when it came to picking up the neck, this is constructed a little bit different than the zipper sweater light that I made last year. You pick up stitches starting at the bottom center here where the zipper is, all the way up, and then around the neck as well. And the neck stitches get put on hold while you're knitting the zipper placket in double knitting. Then once you get to the neckline, you continue knitting the collar in 1x1 ribbing, and then you do the double knitting on either end, and you fold it over and knit it together to sew it down. So that technique doesn't have a full zipper facing like the zipper sweater light does. It only has a zipper facing on the neck part, and then underneath the neck is actually exposed. So you have exposed zipper tape. I don't know why I thought there would be a zipper placket. I just assumed that it would be the same as the zipper sweater light, but it's not. I was honestly kind of confused by how the zipper worked, and I realized there's no videos on the pattern. Like, normally on Petiteknit's website, she has videos demonstrating how to do things or certain techniques, but there wasn't really any information on there about how exactly to do this zipper construction, so I do wish that there was more resources. I wound up going on Ravelry and looking through the photos of other people's projects to realize that there's no zipper facing here. So that is something to keep in mind. Once I finished knitting it and before I blocked it, I tried it on and I was really happy with the length of the sweater. It was actually perfect. So I didn't want it to get any longer, but it did need to get wider because the cables needed to sort of expand. Before I blocked it, I measured the length from the front and back of the body to make sure that when I did block it and pin it flat, I was not overstretching it and that it wouldn't be way too long. So I'm really glad that I did that because now the fit is perfect. The circumference got a lot wider, but the length pretty much stayed the same. I guess I could have stretched it longer, but obviously I didn't want to. And then the sleeves, I believe these sleeves, I stretched them to about 70 centimeters from the cuff to the base of the neck. And that's pretty much where I like all my sleeves to sit lengthwise. So yeah, blocking it was easy. And then in terms of how wide I stretched the body, I basically just followed the pattern size guide for the size extra small, and I stretched it to the circumference that it called for my size. Since I had all the measurements, I wasn't confused at all about how far to stretch it. I feel like with cables, it can be easy to not stretch the garment far enough or stretch it too much because the cables can really expand. Like, you have a lot of wiggle room when you're blocking cabled stuff and textured stuff. So it made it a lot easier knowing the measurements that I was supposed to stretch it to. One thing that I did run into as I was blocking it is that it took so long to dry, especially the double folded neck in ribbing, because this is such a woolly yarn and it's worsted weight. I think it took like 4 days to dry in total, and I had to flip it over a few times, and I even turned it inside out to make sure that the neck was completely dry, because the last thing I wanted was moisture and mold to be growing in my sweater. That would be terrible. But once it dried, I was super happy with the shape and the way the cables expanded and everything, but I didn't have a zipper in yet. I also wasn't sure if I was supposed to block the sweater before or after installing the zipper because there was no instructions about that in the pattern whatsoever, but I looked it up and it made sense logically to me to block the sweater first, see how it stretches out, and then install the zipper so there's no like puckering or stretching. So I did that. I can't remember if I put my zipper in on my other zipper sweater before or after I blocked it. I think I actually blocked it with the zipper installed. So I don't know, that one worked out too, but this time I blocked it first. In terms of the zipper, I kind of had a zipper fiasco because if you remember from my Everything I Knit in 2024 video, I had some issues with the zipper tape that I got on Amazon for my zipper sweater light. The teeth just didn't go together very well, and some of the zipper tape was just useless because it would get so jammed I couldn't zip the zipper up and down. And I had the same issue this time with the gray and brown colored zipper tape that I got on Amazon. So I went snooping online and I found this place in Toronto called, it's like Leather and Sewing Supply Depot. I can put the name on the screen. They seem legit. They seemed to have a lot of really heavy duty hardware for sewing and working with leather and that sort of thing. So I placed an order from them and I got a few zipper heads and a few zipper tape strips and then also some stoppers. They actually had the exact same zipper heads that Petiteknit sells, but they were like $3 and shipped from Toronto instead of across the ocean. So this is what I went with. They had gold zipper tape, so I got their like taupe colored zipper tape. And then this zipper head, which is gold, and it's the same as the Petiteknit one. I was actually planning on doing like a brass or an antique bronze color zipper. So I ordered a few different colors of this zipper head, like the same shape, and then the zipper tape. And I didn't realize that all the zipper tape was gold teeth. So I just went with the gold zipper head and I think it looks perfect. How many times can I say zipper? But yeah, this is like significantly nicer feeling, like it feels heavy. It zips really smoothly. I have no issues with these zippers at all. It shipped really quickly and I'm glad that I got extras so that whenever I make another zipper sweater in the future, I can just use the same zipper tape and zipper heads or order some new ones. I mean, they didn't have a whole huge variety of like really fun zipper heads, but they had a few options. The quality is very good. I feel like I'm a zipper connoisseur now because I've tried so many kinds of zippers and this is like by far the best zipper that I've used. And it's all metal hardware, which is really nice. So yeah, that was my zipper dilemma, but once I blocked the sweater and got the zipper and switched out the head, I was ready to install it into the sweater. I followed the video instructions for installing the zipper on the zipper sweater pattern page. I don't even know if they have that video linked in the Dagmar Zipper Sweater pattern page. I'm not sure. But I followed those instructions. You basically pin it in place and then you hand stitch it. At first, I hand stitched just right up close to where the zipper teeth are, which you can see, to make sure that there was no areas where the yarn was like getting caught on the zipper and it was nice and clean. After that, I noticed that the zipper tape on the area where there's no facing was kind of flipping out and I wanted it to be nice and flat, especially because I don't want it to like get caught on the zipper and fray, and then that would just be terrible. So I went back in and I hand stitched another row of stitches just on the outer edge of the zipper tape to keep it flush to the fabric. And that actually made a huge difference. I think that I would do that again if I was making another one of these, because you can see the zipper is like, it's kind of fixed there, it's not going anywhere, and it just makes it look a lot cleaner. So this is what it looks like on the inside. I think it looks pretty clean. There's some people on Ravelry that have modified this pattern to use the same double knitted facing on the front and back of this zipper. I think if you're bothered by the exposed zipper tape, that's definitely an option. Or if you're worried that your stitches might be a little uneven or messy looking. Mine are not perfect by any means, but they do the job, and I'm not bothered by having the zipper tape out. As long as you like tie your thread down, it's not a big deal. Yeah, so this is my Dagmar zipper sweater, all finished, and it won Best in Show at the fair, which is pretty awesome too. The next thing I want to talk about is also a very exciting finished object. I showed these in my last video. I think I had just finished the first one, or maybe I was working on the first one, but now there are two and they are done. Here they are, and they are done. This is the mittens. I also submitted these in the fair and they came first in the mitten category, which is super exciting. Here they are without the ribbon. So these are cuff up mittens that have a finger opening, an enclosed thumb, and then a flap that goes over the fingers. This pattern is called the Niilo-lapaset. I think that's how you say it. Mitten pattern. It's written in Finnish only, so it's not available in English. And I did translate it and go off a translation because I thought these were so perfect. I made these in Topsy Farms worsted weight wool, so it's the same yarn that I used for my Dagmar Zipper Sweater, but it's dyed. It's called Purple Heather, I think. This is what it looks like in the ball. This is all I have left. I purchased one skein of this yarn and it made an entire pair of mittens with this much to spare. In hindsight, maybe I could have made the cuff a little bit longer knowing that I have some leftover, but it's just good to know for the next time I make this pattern, which I definitely will. I'm really happy with the yarn choice. The gauge is perfect, the density is perfect, and I think it knitted up so nicely. The Purple Heather color, it's like blue and red combined fibers to make this nice purple. Devin picked out this yarn and specifically requested convertible mittens, so that is what I made. The pattern, as I said, is only in Finnish, but I think my translation turned out pretty accurate because the gloves obviously turned out fine. The way it's constructed is from the cuff up, you cast on with a tubular cast on at the cuff, you knit the cuff, and then you do some increases to shape the thumb. And then once you get to the base of the thumb, you put the thumb stitches on hold and you continue knitting the rest of the finger tube and bind off with a tubular bind off. Then you go back, pick up stitches along the back of the hand here. And it's interesting, you actually pick up in between the stitches. So you pick up the bar in between the stitches, not inside the V, if that makes sense. And you cast on some more stitches on the front. And then you continue knitting in the round until you get to the tip of the fingers. And then you start some decreases and bind off with a Kitchener bind off at the end. After you finish the finger flap, you go back and finish the thumb just like any other mitten. So you knit in the round for a while and then you do some decreases. So yeah, that's basically how it's constructed. I was nervous starting out because I had never knit a mitten like this, obviously, and it looks really complicated, but it's not that bad. And I did, in fact, knit a right and a left mitten. If you remember from one of my previous videos, I knit 2 right-hand mittens, and that did not turn out very well. So these are correct, and I knit the other one exactly the same as the first one. Yeah, the fit is actually perfect for him too. This is kind of how it works with the finger flap, and then you can put the finger flap down. He's really, really happy with them, and I am also very happy with how these turned out. I think they look so professional and clean. I knit these with the recommended needle size, which is a 3mm, and the ribbing calls for 2.5, but I don't think that I had one, so I just used a 2.75 and it looks fine. I knit the second largest size and the fit is perfect for him. I don't know what my gauge is off the top of my head, but I'll measure it and I'll put it on the screen. I initially cast on for the largest size based on his measurements, and it was way too big, so I did the second largest size. I truly don't know if I got gauge because I never measured. Yeah, I guess there's not a whole lot else to say about this. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I'm thinking that I will make another pair of these with the leftover Topsy Farms worsted from my Dagmar Zipper Sweater in the coming months. The next finished thing I have to share with you is something you haven't seen before, and it's actually 2 somethings. When I was getting ready to submit for the fair, I was looking at the categories that they had available for the knitting competition. If you haven't had a fair like this or haven't heard of anything like this, personally, I hadn't heard of this until I moved to this town and realized they had a knitting competition at the fair. It's run by the Agricultural Society, and they come up with all of the categories that you're able to submit things for in the knitting category and in all the other ones like baking and sewing and so on. I was looking and I noticed they had a matching hat and scarf set category. So that was my cue to make a matching hat and scarf. I've had some Sandnes Sunday in my stash for a while in the color Poppy, and I was always planning on making some winter accessories with it, like bright red winter accessories, but I never got around to doing it. Then after I finished my Esther sweater, the red one that I showed in the last video, I think, I had almost a whole ball left over of the Les Garçons yarn, Falkland DK, and Mohair, and it's kind of a similar red color. So I decided that I was going to make a fluffy red hat and scarf. The first thing I cast on was the hat, and it's of course the Oslo hat. Here it is. Isn't it so fun and bright? If you don't know, if you've been living under a rock and haven't heard of this pattern, it's from Petiteknit. It's a cuff up hat knit with a double folded rim. So you basically cast on at the base of the hat, you knit the length of the cuff, and then you sew the cast on stitches together with the working stitches, and you continue knitting up in the round, and then you do your crown decreases. I cast this on a couple weeks before the fair, I think. The pattern calls for a DK weight yarn. So the original pattern uses 2 strands of Sandnes Sunday. That is what I used, 2 strands of Sunday along with 1 strand of mohair. There's the original Oslo hat, which uses DK weight yarn, and then there's the mohair edition, which is essentially the same. I think it has the same gauge, but it calls for 1 strand of fingering and 1 strand of silk mohair instead of 2 strands of fingering weight yarn. I don't know. I tried casting on with just 1 strand of fingering weight yarn, and I felt like it wasn't substantial enough. So I just added a strand of mohair to the original Oslo hat pattern, and it feels pretty good. I did not gauge swatch, but I'm very happy with how the fabric turned out. It's pretty dense, but it's not too dense, and it has a nice sort of drape to it. The size I cast on is actually not on the pattern either. The stitch counts for each size are in 8 stitch increments, so I just cast on 8 stitches less than the smallest size because I have kind of a small head. I've not knit one of these for myself, but I've knit a lot of these for other people. I find that this hat runs kind of big. I don't know why. Maybe it's meant to like be kind of loose on your head and oversized, but I'm not about that. I kind of want it snug to my head and not feeling like it's gonna fall off. So I knit 8 stitches smaller than the smallest size, and I think I started the crown decreases sooner as well. The Oslo hat pattern has kind of like a poof on top, and I don't like that look either. I wanted it more like a toque. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I can try it on for you. The fit is really good. I was worried at first that it was going to be a little too tight. Before I blocked it, it was pretty snug on my head, but I just made sure to stretch it out quite a bit when I was actually blocking it, and the fit is perfect. Like, this is exactly how I wanted it to fit. So I'm really happy with that. I genuinely think I finished this in like a week. It was so fast. I was very highly motivated to get this done before the fair. Speaking of finishing things in a week, I cast on the matching scarf and also finished it in the same amount of time. And spoiler, it came second at the local fair. So this is what the scarf turned out like. This is sort of a modification of the Sophie scarf and the Sophie shawl. I knit this with 2 strands of Sandnes Sunday, 1 strand of Les Garçons silk mohair, and 1 strand of Les Garçons Falkland DK in the color NYX Currant Obsession, which is the same yarn I used for my Esther sweater. So this has 1 extra strand of yarn in it than the hat does. But the colors are still quite similar, as you can see. This was, like I said, sort of a modification between the Sophie scarf and the Sophie shawl. Given that I used so many strands of yarn, I think this works out to be like a bulky weight yarn. So I used a 5.5mm needle, and I think the Sophie shawl calls for a 5, but I cast on with a 5 and it was really dense, so I upped it to a 5.5. I followed the increase rate for the Sophie shawl, and I basically just knit until I was halfway through my mohair based on weight, because that is the yarn that I had the least of, so I didn't want to run out. And spoiler, I actually did run out, which was so unfortunate. I got to about this point on the decreases. I had a few inches left and I ran out of mohair. So I did not know what I was gonna do. I was thinking of going to my local yarn shop and just finding a mohair that matched, because I didn't want to order a whole ball of mohair from Les Garçons yarn shop and pay for shipping just for like literally this much. I used some mohair that I have and I've been using for another project that I'll talk about in a sec, but this is knitting for olive silk mohair in the color blood orange, and I wound up using this to finish it off because it's close enough. I mean, it is a lot more warm tone, I will say, than the Les Garçons mohair, but I don't think you can tell. I mean, if you look really close, you can see the core. This is the Les Garçons mohair. The core is like pretty cool toned and pale, whereas the silk core of this one is a lot more orange. But really, at the end of the day, no one will be able to tell. And yeah, this is my Sophie scarf and shawl and my Oslo hat. This is pretty similar to the length of the other Sophie scarf that I have. Let me put it on to show you. So I like to wear these in the winter, kind of under my coat like this to keep the wind from blowing in. And then with my matching hat and scarf. I think it looks so cute. I love a bright red winter accessory and I've never had one. But as soon as I finished this and tried it on, my friend told me I look like I'm in a Hallmark movie. Honestly, it is kind of giving Hallmark movie, but in the best way. So this is my last finished thing, the matching scarf and hat. That is it for all of the new things that I finished since I last recorded a video. Before I get into the things I'm currently working on, I want to finish up talking about all the things I submitted in the fair, because I did submit some other things that I previously finished, but they all got ribbons, so I want to show them to you. I show this as a finished object in my last video, and it is my Esther sweater from Petiteknit. I made this in one strand of Les Garçons Falkland DK and one strand of their silk mohair in the color NYX Currant Obsession. This was submitted in the pullover sweater category and it came third. Ooh, there we go, it came third. They put a note on it and it said it was because there was some pills on the bottom, if you can see. Yeah, this one came third in the sweater category. I won't dwell on explaining this one too much because I talk about it a lot more in my last video, so if you're curious, you can check that one out. The next thing I submitted was in the adult cardigan category, and it was my Maggie cardigan from Petiteknit. I showed this in my Everything I Knit in 2024 video, and this one came first in the cardigan category. I made this with one strand of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino and one strand of Sandnes Sunday. So yes, this one did well. I actually also submitted this last year and it won best overall, but obviously my Dagmar sweater is much more impressive. And finally, I submitted in the socks category. I submitted these contrasting white and pink socks. The main color on these is the Isair sock yarn, and then the contrast color is hand-dyed bee sock in the color Morning Dew, and this one came second in the sock category. So there we go. That's all the things I submitted to the fair and all of my finished objects. Now let's move on to the things that I'm currently working on. I have some updates on my Sevilla blouse that I started in my last video, and here she is. So this is from Petiteknit. It's a top-down drop shoulder boat neck blouse with some 1x1 ribbing on the edges of the body and sleeves, and it has just a rolled neck at the top. I was chatting about this in my last video, and I think I said I cast on a size small, but I wound up changing my mind and I'm casting on with the size extra small because, again, similar to the Dagmar Zipper Sweater, I know this is slightly oversized and there's some positive ease, but I didn't want it to be way too oversized and huge and baggy. I mostly just wanted to follow the fit of the sample photos, so that's why I did the extra small. I actually knit quite a big section of this sweater in the size small and then I had to pull it all out and restart. So since my last video, I literally started from scratch on this sweater. At this point, I have knit to the edge of the body, as you can see, and I've picked up for the right sleeve. The body is really, really simple. It's just knitting in the round all the way down, and then the edge of the body has 3 rounds of 1x1 ribbing and then a tubular bind off. I actually don't know why I didn't notice before. I cast it on that had a ribbing on the edges. I didn't realize, but I think it's cute. It keeps it from rolling at the bottom, which is obviously helpful. And the length is perfect. It sits right at my hip, so that's exactly where I wanted it to sit. The sleeve, I'm actually knitting on Magic Loop. I picked it up with a 16-inch circular, and then I realized that the sleeve is smaller than that, so Magic Loop it is. I'm knitting this whole sweater actually on 4.5mm needles. I think the pattern calls for 5, but I actually hit gauge with 4.5. So it looks pretty good. It's not too like holey and mesh-like, and it has a really, really nice drape to it. So I'm super excited to have this done because the color is so pink and Barbie. I love it. The pattern is pretty straightforward. I think I mentioned in my last video that I was potentially going to follow the sleeve instructions for the My Favorite Things Knitwear blouse #1, but I think I'm not going to do that. I think I'm just going to follow the instructions for the Sevilla blouse for the entire sleeve. So that's it for the pattern. It's pretty straightforward. I am knitting it with one strand of Knitting for Olive pure silk in the color raspberry pink. The number is 97936. And I'm holding that with a strand of Sandnes Lena in the color 4315, which I believe is called Bubblegum Pink. So these two together are just so perfect. They match perfectly, and the fabric is knitting up so nicely. It's nice and heavy, like it feels substantial, but it has a really nice drape to it, and it doesn't feel like it's too heavy where it's dragging. There we go. Now you can see that better. Yeah. So that's the update on my Sevilla blouse. I'm gonna keep chugging away at this. I'm hoping to just knit on this for the time being and actually finish it and block it so I can wear it before it gets too cold. So we'll see about that. Hopefully I don't get too distracted with my other things, but yeah, that's the update on her. The next thing I want to talk about is something I've actually cast on since the last time I filmed a video, and it is the cloud blouse from Petiteknit. This is what I'm working with so far. It's really not much of anything, but yeah, it's a few inches long. I've got the width down, and now I'm just kind of knitting flat back and forth. So I can put a picture on the screen of what this actually will look like. The cloud blouse is from Petiteknit, and it's a top-down drop shoulder sweater with rolled edges on the mock neck, the body, and the sleeves. The cloud blouse is knit with just silk mohair, and then the cloud sweater has the same construction but a bigger gauge, and it's knit with a blown yarn held with the silk mohair. The yarn that I'm using is from my trip to Iceland this summer. It is Istex Plötulopi in the color 1766, and I'm holding it with one strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color blood orange. So these two together are like this fiery red kind of color, and the fabric is turning out to be exactly that. This like fiery red orange. It's really bright in person. I'm really happy with it. I made a gauge swatch with these two yarns. I basically wanted to make either the cloud blouse or the cloud sweater with the unspun Istex yarn because I thought it would just be so perfect for the style, but I didn't know what my gauge would be. So I did a couple gauge swatches, and I wound up using a 4mm needle, and I was really happy with the fabric that it gave me, but my gauge with the 4mm needle was 19 stitches. The gauge of the cloud blouse is 20 stitches, and the gauge of the cloud sweater is 17 stitches. So I'm in between both of them, and I didn't know what to do. But the construction of the cloud blouse and the cloud sweater is pretty much identical. It's just the gauge and the sizing and the amount of suggested ease that is different. I actually have both of the patterns, so I compared the stitch counts for the body for the size small and extra small just to see what I was working with and what size and pattern I should actually make given my gauge, and I landed on making the cloud blouse in a size small because I wanted around 20 to 25 centimeters of positive ease, and given my gauge and the amount of stitches on that size in the cloud blouse, I think I'm going to achieve the size that I want in this sweater, if that makes sense. It took me a while to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, but this is what I'm committing to now, and let's just hope that it works out. So far the width is pretty good. I think that it'll be a good like drop shoulder width of the body. This sweater is knit from the top down. You start at the back of the neck and you make increases to shape the shoulders. You pick up for the shoulders and knit the front yoke, and then you connect in the round and knit the whole body. And so far I'm really enjoying this, and I'm excited to have it done for like fall winter time. This is my first time knitting with unspun yarn, and so far so good. It's not that bad. I was nervous, but doing the gauge watches really helped as well to see how much tension I can put on it and figure out how to like not have it break all the time pretty much, because this yarn will just completely come apart. So you have to be careful when you're tensioning the yarn, wrapping it around your fingers, or if you're a really tight knitter, you might have a hard time. I think holding it with a strand of mohair keeps me from overstretching it and ripping it all the time. I definitely have had a few instances where it tears and I have to splice it back together, but I find the best scenario to knit with this is if the plate of yarn is sitting flat on the ground and I just pull gently this way when I'm pulling for more yarn, because if you let this like roll around on the floor and just throw it in a bag, that's a recipe to rip it. So far that's what I've learned is the best sort of method to knit with this, and I am using metal needles and I have not had an issue. When I first was looking up the best way to knit with unspun yarn, I read that knitting with wooden needles is easier or keeps it from ripping compared to working with metal needles, but I just prefer the feel of the metal needles and so far I haven't had too many issues. So yeah, not a whole lot of like progress on this, but it is an exciting cast on nonetheless, and I think there's going to be very exciting updates the next time I check in with you. The last thing I have to share is something new that I've acquired. I'm just so into mohair for this winter. I wanted to knit an all over mohair sweater, so I got this from the Knitting Loft. It is their Dust Silk Mohair in the color Handy Floss. Are you kidding me? So this is a hand-dyed silk mohair, and it's this white base with pink and purple, and actually there's a little bit of yellow specks in it as well. It's just so stunning, and I think that holding two of these strands together is going to give such a nice like pink speckly texture to the mohair fabric. I am honestly just super excited to work this up. I have resisted putting this into a ball so that I could show you what it looks like all wound up in the skein, because it's just incredible. I think these are all the same dye lot. They look pretty similar. My plan is to make an all over mohair sweater using two strands of mohair held together, and I think that using two strands from like different balls is going to keep this hand-dyed yarn from pooling too much. Plus it's speckly, so I'm not too worried about like huge chunks of pink throughout the sweater. I just don't know what mohair sweater pattern I want to use. I originally thought I would make the Ravelry blouse, which is the one with the diagonal button band down the front, but I'm not entirely convinced about that pattern. It could be a little trendy for me, and I also think that it might be too much having patterned yarn on that sort of busy sweater on the front. I also considered doing the Ivy blouse, which is similar to the Ravelry blouse, but it doesn't have the button band across the front. It's just a pullover. There's also the Cumulus blouse, which was originally made with mohair. I have made a version with linen yarn, and that turned out really nice, but I don't know if I'm feeling the V-neck. And then I think My Favorite Things Knitwear has a blouse that's all mohair, and other than that, I'm not too sure what all mohair sweaters are out there. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to hear your mohair sweater inspo. I'm just really feeling like being fluffy this winter. I mean, who doesn't want to be fluffy? So yeah, I think I'm gonna wind this up soon and do some gauge swatching to figure out what my gauge is exactly, and then maybe I can go from there, because obviously I want the sweater to fit. That is the new thing I acquired. It is very exciting, and like I said, let me know your mohair sweater pattern ideas down below, because that would be very helpful. All right, that is all I had to share with you today. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below what it is you're excited about knitting on this winter. I would love to get some winter knitting inspiration from you guys. If you want more details about the things I'm knitting, you can check out my Ravelry, which is at Hella Knitting. You can also see more updates in between videos on my Instagram, which is at hella.knits. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!